Now, the next thing we're going to be learning is what I believe to be the most complex thing in video editing for beginners to actually get a grasp of, all right? You've learned the basics of video editing, you've learned how to cut, you learned how to use your tools, you even learned how to do text and the entire workspace of video editing, right? You even know how to do sequences. However, when it comes to animation and keyframes, this is where the majority of beginners really get confused. So all I need you guys to do right now is to just pay really close attention and make sure you practice with me once we get into the practicing. Okay, for now, this section is going to be broken down to first of all learning, and then we're going to practice. So when we're learning, just pay attention with me. And then once we're practicing, I really want you to focus and practice with me as I go along so you can grasp this. It's going to be really easy if you pay attention. Okay, now in today's episode, we're going to talk about keyframes. We're going to be answering what keyframes are, how we can use keyframes. We're going to take a look at a few examples of keyframes, and we're lastly going to be creating a zoom in inside of Premiere Pro. So to do this, first of all, let's explain the concept of keyframes. What are keyframes? Now, if you remember this entire workspace, which we had, which is our actionable step number 1, and let me show you a quick example of how keyframes are used. Let's say, for example, I wanted to take this clip. When I click on it and move its position to the left side, its entire position, the entire position of the clip changes to the left side. Now, if I wanted it to be at the left side over here and slowly animate itself sliding all the way to the right side over here, how do I do that? Because if I place it at the right side, the entire clip changes. Whereas if I place it on the left side, the entire clip changes to the left side. Could I perhaps maybe cut up every single second and then change it bit by bit? So could I go in here and change it a bit to the left and a bit to the right every single second to make it look like an animation? No, of course not. This is where keyframes come in, all right? To understand keyframes, it's gonna be really simple, all right? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell Premiere Pro that at 0 seconds, right over here, my position is this, all right? And then all the way over at 15 seconds, my position has changed to the left, okay? And what Premiere Pro will do is it will say, okay, so if at this position, it's stagnant, and at this point, it's on the left side, I'm gonna animate it moving from this point all the way to this point with a smooth slide animation. All right, so if that's simple to understand, let's go ahead and implement it the exact same way inside of Premiere Pro. All right, nice and simple. Watch this. All I have to do to create a keyframe, right, is just tell Premiere Pro, at this point, I want it right over here. So if I could just talk to Premiere Pro, I could say right now, Premiere, I just want it on this side, okay? And maybe at this point, I'm gonna want it like somewhere over here, all right? How do I say that to Premiere Pro? Well, the easiest way I can say that is how keyframes come in. Keyframes basically tell Premiere Pro that at this point, all right, we're gonna use our drawing again. At this section, right over here, this is my position. This is called a keyframe. It's the point at which Premiere Pro knows, okay, over here on my green, right, this is exactly where my position is located. So over here, that's what my position is. And if I create another keyframe over here telling Premiere Pro it's on the left side, or sorry, right side, so forgive me, if it's on the right side, then Premiere Pro will know, okay, at this point it's neutral, and at this point it's on the right side. I have to move it from neutral to the right side. Okay, nice and simple. So let's go ahead and do that. How do we tell Premiere Pro that at 0 seconds it is on the left side? Well, all I have to do is create a point that tells it it's on the left side. To create that point, I need to create a keyframe. And to create a keyframe, all I have to do is click on this stopwatch icon right over here. And this like, what is this, a rhombus? This is a rhombus shape. It's kind of like a tilted square. So this rhombus shape is going to appear, this one right over here. And this one simply tells Premiere Pro that at this point, this is the position of my clip. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my clip start on the left side. So it means that at this point, this is the position of my clip. Now, do I have any other keyframes on here? No, I don't. So if I move throughout my video, there's no other keyframes on here, right? There's nothing happening. It's still on the left side. However, as soon as I move forward, create another keyframe by clicking this right over here. These arrow tools allow me to switch between keyframes, okay? Now my second keyframe has the exact same, variables as my first keyframe. Why? Because I didn't change anything from this point to this point. However, if I created a second keyframe and then changed it to the right side, then things are going to change, because as I watch through it, This is just me speaking into the camera. Look at what just happened. It went from the left side to the right side, and this is the complete fundamentals of animation. If you can grasp this, you're going to do really good in animations, okay? So now if I place the keyframe at this point and at this point, there's nothing happening before here, right? Premiere Pro is simply understanding that there's nothing else happening over here. It's simply staying at this position. Whereas once this keyframe like happens, it tells Premiere Pro that at this point, this is my position. Starting from this point, it's going to move it to the right side. It's not going to move it from this point. Why? Because it knows that at this point is where my position was on the left side. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. So now if I move these all the way back, it means that at this point it's on the neutral and at this point it's on the right side. It's going to move it across the whole thing. Okay. I hope that makes sense. And this is just the fundamentals of creating keyframes. If you want to remove them, you just click on this and click on OK. All right. Make sure you reset your parameters. So now the best way to understand keyframes is to simply create keyframes for every single variable and see what they do. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just zoom in on my clip here so it's a bit clearer. And I'm actually going to apply these keyframes to a logo because it's going to help us understand things a lot better. So I'm going to scale it down to around here. And let's see what happens. Okay. Now, if I move the position left or right, the entire thing will always stay left or right. There's nothing that's going to change. Okay. Now, if I center it, create a keyframe telling Premiere Pro at this moment, this is the position. Okay. Remember this. This is all that keyframes are about. It means at this moment, this is the position. That's literally all it means. It just says this X is my position. That's literally all that it means. Okay. So if I'm telling Premiere Pro that at this moment, this is my position, nothing's going to happen along the entire thing. However, as soon as I leave this as the same and then move, forward a bit, I don't even have to create a keyframe. I can simply change the position and Premiere Pro will automatically create a new keyframe. What happened now is that, look at this. You're going to assume, now I want you to pretty much assume what's going to happen. This keyframe says that it's supposed to be at the center. Okay, so it means that at this moment right over here, it's at the center. This keyframe says that it's going to be on the right side. So at this moment here, it's going to be on the right side. So this means center, this means right side. Okay, what's going to happen between? It's going to go from the center all the way to the right side. All right, nice and logical. Let's go ahead and watch if our assumption is correct. That's exactly it. And notice it only starts at the first keyframe and ends at our last keyframe. To toggle between them, all you got to do is go through these like this. And I can actually go through and hover over my keyframe. If I go to the exact frame at which my keyframe is located, if I go to a frame before it, you can see if I change it, it's actually going to create a keyframe before it. If I go to a frame after it and change the position, it's actually going to create a keyframe after it. Whereas if I just go to the exact frame and change it, it's just going to change the variables of my second keyframe. Which means if I wanted to change it so that my actual logo starts from the left side, not from the center, all I got to do is just go to my first keyframe, which is my center, and move it to the left side. And it's going to go from the left side to the right side. Because now all of a sudden, this just says that at this moment, Premiere Pro knows that it's on the left side, and that at this moment, Premiere Pro knows that it's on the right side, just as we explained. Okay? Nice and simple. So now, once we've understood this, let's go ahead and create some keyframes for the rest of our variables. All right? Nice and simple. We'll click on this and remove our animation and make sure it's centered. And let's mess around with the variables to figure out what happens. What happens if I created a keyframe telling Premiere Pro that my scale is 38 at this point, and then went backwards, or now let's just put this at the beginning, and went forward a bit and moved my scale down. Now, what Premiere Pro knows is that at this point, my scale was 38, right? And at this point, excuse the bad handwriting, my scale is now, how much is it? It's 21. So it's gonna go from 38 to 21. What does that mean? For it to go from scale 38 to scale 21, it's just simply gonna decrease in size. Let's go ahead and move it and do it with something else. What about the rotation? If I keyframe my rotation over here as, let's try something different. Let's do -10 over here. And then I place it at the beginning and I keyframe my rotation of 15 over here. So it's gonna go from -10 to 15. I'm gonna place these at the ends so that my animation starts here and ends here. Let's assume what's gonna happen one more time. So at this point, it is facing this direction. And at this point, it's gonna be facing this direction. it's going to turn from this point to this direction. How is it going to do that? Watch this. With a nice and simple slow turn. Okay? Now, you can keyframe pretty much everything inside of Premiere Pro. You can even keyframe your opacity. For example, if I keyframe my opacity at this point to be 100% and at this point to be 0, what this means is, one more time, at this point it's invisible, and at this point it is visible. So it's slowly going to transition from invisible to visible within this time space. And to go ahead and see this in action, there you go. That is how you make a simple reveal, right? Nice and basic. So to teach you, as I promised, how to create a zoom in inside of a Premiere Pro, it is very, very, very basic. All you have to do is simply select your clip, go up to your scale and keyframe your scale at the initial position, at the initial scale amount. So my initial amount is 100. Then all I have to do is go forward a bit and change that to something like 120. Let's study what happens here. At this point, my scale is 100, okay? And at this point, my scale is now 120. So for it to go from 100 to 120, it has to increase in size over this duration, all right? And let's see exactly how this takes place. From this point to this point, it's gonna go from 100 to 120. So it's gonna increase from this point to this point. Watch this. It's just me speaking into the camera. There you go. That is a quick zoom in. Now, if I place this at the beginning of my frame and I place this at the end, it pretty much means that this entire clip is going to go from 100 to 120 from beginning to end. This is just me speaking into the camera. And that's how you get this smooth and simple zoom in. That's how you create a zoom in Premiere Pro. And if I want to do this quickly, all I got to do is go in here. This is how I usually do it if I want to do it manually. I'll create a keyframe and place my original keyframe. Since the original amount is the default scale of my clip, I'll place that at the beginning. And then I'll just write out 120 and it's going to create a new keyframe for me and I'll place that at the end. This is just me speaking into the camera. I've gone ahead and created a zoom in. And to do a zoom out, guess what you got to do? Now you got to solve this one, okay? So if to create a zoom in, we create a keyframe here and a keyframe here, and this one was 100 and this one was 120. So the program had to go from this point to this point and rise, okay? Rise up in scale. If I want to do the opposite, if I want to go from this point to this point, but decrease in scale, all I do is I start it at 120 and then I end it at 100. So it goes from this point to this point and decreases in scale. And let's see exactly how that works. I'll bring these keyframes a bit closer to each other and go ahead and use my arrow tools. Go over here, set that to 120 and set the second one to 100. So now it's going from 120 to 100. And if we watch this through, this is just me speaking into the camera. Nice and simple. Nice and basic. It doesn't get much easier than this. And these are the fundamentals of animation and the fundamentals of keyframes, which is, in my opinion, the hardest lesson to learn as a beginner. I hope you understand this. If you feel like this is easy, I am extremely thankful for that, which means like you're genuinely going to have an easy time with editing. However, if you have any problems, please go ahead and head over to our community post, in which we've got a section for problems and issues. Go ahead and write out a post telling us what your problem is. So that I can either create courses about it, or someone could answer you, or I can even answer you myself, all right? Or you can bring your questions to the group calls, which we're having on Wednesdays and Mondays, okay? Thanks a lot for watching. That's it in terms of keyframes. You're going to be needing this in our final actionable step, which is going to be very nice and exciting. And feel free to get creative with your animations, all right? Feel free to, start something on, use a rotation animation and a movement animation. There's nothing that's stopping you. You can do both. You can actually do 3 of them. You can do 4 of them. You can do all of them together. You can animate everything all together at the same time. This is where your creativity is going to take over everything. All right, so thanks a lot for watching. I'll go ahead and see you in our final episode before we get into our actionable step, okay? Let's finish it off with our final episode. We've got a nice one lined up right after this one. But if you've practiced with this one and understood everything, get ready for the last one before we get to your test, before we start turning you into an advanced video editor. All right, see you in the next episode.